It's my pleasure to introduce David Ingbar. David is the Division Director of Pulmonary, Allergy, Critical Care, and Sleep Medicine in the Department of Medicine. And he's here today as the Director of Research, Education, Training, and Career Development in the CTSI, which truly is a bonus for our institution to have this here. And he is in charge of managing these components that are important for training, translational training. And he's going to go over these things today as a way of introducing the faculty, the junior faculty, to opportunities that are available to them. He wanted to know if this is an interactive forum. Yes, so please interact. David, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it.
A pleasure to be with you all.
All right, here we go.
So, for this presentation, I'm happy to say I have no conflicts. And I really appreciate Jim's invitation. So I'm sort of the bearer of the CTSI information. I feel like I'm representing a lot of people being here. So I just want to step back for a minute and start because CTSI, I mean, some people think this is this giant money suck on the university. And I want to talk a little bit about what are the goals of the CTSI, just briefly, and then what can we offer and what don't we offer? And that's where the interactive pieces may be helpful, especially around training. So just what are CTSI's, Clinical Translational Science Institutes, that are funded by NCATS, a center within, or an institute within NIH that's relatively junior. The CTSI Awards, the CTSA, started in 2006. As Debbie Powell well knows, that was a major focus early on in her leadership time. And right now there are about 60 funded sites. The current jargon is hubs. I discovered when I got dropped into this world that there is an incredible love of acronyms and terms, etc. The total amount that NCATS spends on CTSI-related awards is almost $500 million per year. It's a lot of money. And for the grants themselves, what's required are 4 components: a parent component, the KL2 or institutional career development component for junior faculty, which I'll talk about in more detail, an optional translational science type of T32, which carries its own label of TL1 for reasons I don't understand. And you have the opportunity to ask for money for optional functions. Our 2 optional functions at the university CTSI, one is MRI brain related, and the other is pediatric device design. So we're now in our second 5-year round of funding. We were first funded in 2011. There was a brief hiatus, and what happens is the FOA for these awards, these are gigantic grants. They end up being 2,500 or 3,000 pages when they're submitted. And because 60 centers around the country are involved, getting unconflicted reviewers is very difficult, which translates to very eclectic reviews, dare I say, at least some of the time. So this is sort of some of the big picture information. I want to make sure I don't shut the machine down here. So some of you may be sitting there saying, what is this translational science anyways? Jim and I were talking about how we've all suddenly become designated translational scientists, and how NCATS defines this. It's sort of an ecumenical scientific discipline of sorts, which is the field of investigation focused on understanding the scientific and operational principles underlying each step of the process of translation. And it's designed to be system-wide level. So they don't want to study, neurologic disease or cardiovascular disease. It's really sort of the underlying general principles of how is science conducted, how are findings translated, including, stuff at the bench that has potential clinical relevance, all the way out to implementation, dissemination, public policy. So they're basically claiming the entire spectrum of biomedical research in my mind. You're all translational scientists, whether you want to be or not. So these are from NCATS, the program goals. And the one that's most relevant to what I'm going to talk about today is train and cultivate the translational workforce. But a key part of this, and this is in their order, is to engage patients and communities in all phases, gets highlighted. So even if you're doing bench research, they want some community engaged component of that, where you're interacting with either the potential patient or family recipients or industry or you name it. So the goal here is not to be academically siloed. Promote integration of special and underserved populations in translational research. And the congressional record in the last year said the CTSIs must deal with the opioid crisis and rural medicine. So, you know, those are two new focus areas thanks to Congress. And so, you know, we expect when the next FOA comes out that we better have performance metrics in those areas. And they want to advance cutting-edge informatics, which definitely applies to people in this department. So when you write one of these things, it gets broken down. This is just the parent U component, has a bunch of different pieces. But the reason for putting this up is just to make you aware, and I think probably most of you are, of the different hubs that we have, or cores that are part of this. So there is this community engagement hub, and one part of that is to try to reach even into the basic science labs. And for a lot of our scholars who we train, we actually are implementing a community mentorship program where they get assigned a community mentor so that they say, even if they're working at the bench, they are trying to interact with community as part of the NCATS mission and assignment. I'm going to talk mainly about this core, the Research, Education, Training, and Career Development. Tucker Labine leads the Innovation and Discovery core. There's an Informatics core led by Constantine Alaferis, the Biostatistics and Design, led by John Conant, and Evaluation Monitoring. We're required to have a trial innovation network. And there is sort of this common metrics nationwide initiative that they're sponsoring to try to measure what the impact actually is. So I'm not going to spend time on this, but we have a bunch of training programs. I'm going to shift now to talk about what are the training opportunities within the CTSI that we offer. And the question is sort of what's the role of the CTSI training in general related to the medical school, the academic health center, the university? Are we the training center responsible for all research training, since almost all our science is translational science? Or are we focusing on specific pieces? We just had an external advisory board, and they said, you guys want to be Nordstrom's. You don't want to be Walmart with stuff for everybody. So really our goal is to train future leaders who will be successful institutionally and nationally and have impact in terms of translational science. And to do that, this is a little bit complex stair-step slide. We've tried to have training programs sort of across the spectrum, starting actually with undergraduates and postdoctoral professional students to postdocs to faculty in different ways. And what I'm going to tell you about is a series of programs that are really aimed at each of these steps. And you know, I think they have potential relevance in different ways to different people. So for example, the summer programs, we love to have really good mentors. We pay for their training, and I'll tell you about those programs a little bit. There is this new, first time we've had the TL1 or Translational Science T32 program, which I will tell you about, and that's an opportunity. We actually have an add-on translational science program I'll tell you about. And then there are programs for junior faculty. Stephanie, I'm glad you're here because your picture will appear, whether you like it or not, in this talk as a poster child for one of the new programs. So I'm going to take you through this, but the concept is that there's a pipeline or a career ladder, et cetera. So if you say, what's been the impact across all these programs? These are the numbers of scholars that we've trained in different years. Here's where the funding hiatus occurred, and we're now back building up in terms of numbers, and the different colors are just the different programs, but I'll go into more detail. And if you say, even at the faculty level, what are the success rates here? Success rates actually of the trainees, and this is the good news because we get good people in, and of course they do well. So we can't really claim all the credit for this, but when you take good people and try to help them, the results we think are actually very positive. And I'll show you some of this for the faculty programs in more detail, so I'm not going to take you through this now. But clearly, you know, the question is, what are the metrics of success here? And some of the standard academic metrics are obviously grants, publications, promotions, et cetera. But it's harder to measure more global impact. So just to complete the sort of overview, we don't just do these programs in the education core. We offer a bunch of other pieces. I'm going to talk specifically about mentoring and training in mentoring because that definitely relates to building this translational workforce. Another major emphasis within translational science is the fact that we no longer work as an isolated PI. We work in teams much more, and one of the things that we've done locally is to work with Jacob and the faculty leadership to change some of the promotion and tenure definitions so that people get credit for team science activities, particularly where you're a unique member of a team. And we think, having served for more than 10 years total on the P&T committee, we really needed explicit crediting for the team contributions, and that's now in place in the medical school. But team science really is becoming more and more important. I think everybody would agree. Another piece is sort of developing future leaders, and I'll talk just briefly about some of the things we're doing in terms of leadership and executive coaching. And then more broad training of the research professional workforce I'll talk about that includes career development seminars. Please stop me and interrupt. Part of this is, the NCATS wants us to not work in silos where each institution is doing the same things in parallel. So we have a bunch of different formal collaborations externally, particularly with Mayo, with the University of Wisconsin. We have a new senior leadership program that one of your faculty members is participating in that we've exported. We're the first satellite site from University of Colorado. So I'm just going to go through the programs individually, but why don't I pause there for a second, just see if you have any questions about the 30,000-foot viewpoint here. Have I put you to sleep yet?
Just one question.
Yeah.
On the last slide.
Sure.
So are these, Allergy doesn't have a CTSI.
No, they're one of our hub partners as we...
That's what, the others, though, those are CTSI.
Right, those are CTSI, so Wisconsin has its own CTSI.
Yeah.
We also have a Midwest collaborative CTSI group that works together, that the PIs talk monthly. There are some joint IRB activities. I haven't told you all the stuff that's going on by any means. One of the main barriers to research is obviously IRBs, and particularly IRB protocols across multiple institutions. So NCATS has been trying to work on, quote, smart IRB and getting sort of a centralized IRB approach. So I'm going to go sequentially. So let me just tell you about summer programs, because I think for faculty with active research programs, it's free summer labor, but it requires your mentoring. So we have two different programs. One is aimed at underrepresented medicine undergraduate students. That's obviously building the pipeline. That's really important. And the other is for professional students of all different flavors. It can include pre-doctoral nursing students. It can include people from medical students, nursing, public health, et cetera, pharmacy. And we've tried intentionally to be broad in terms of the first 5 years of funding. We were criticized justifiably for being very medical school centric. So part of our goal has been to make sure the leadership of the CTSI Education Corps really takes advantage of the big university, including engineering and stuff that's outside of the traditional health sciences. Ned Patterson from the vet school leads the summer programs. Basically, it's a 12-week full-time program. The students get a stipend from CTSI. They attend weekly seminars, their networking events. Pharmacy has built a piggyback program called the Melendi Scholars Program. And we've had some really nice successes. And one of the things we're doing, obviously, is trying to track where these students actually go. There are other undergraduate, underrepresented programs in the school and in the university, but this one really is focused more on being sure people are thinking about how to translate. How does their work translate into impact on health? And that seems to attract students and be very popular. They participate in an annual research poster symposium and their travel awards and other things that are all part of that, which they like. More typical is this brand new TL1 program, which is like a T32 but focused on translational science. And this is an optional part of CTSA awards, so we did not have this the first round. We do have it now. And what we used to have and what's continued is a program led by Yoji Shimizu called the Translational Research Development Program. And we didn't, this was all, the latter was totally institutionally funded. So, so it's not lots of money, but it was important. So let me tell you about that first, because it was really the predecessor. Currently, Jayne Fulkerson from the School of Nursing, who previously was in public health, is in charge of this program. And the goal here of this TRDP portion is to take people who are in maybe a basic science lab or a lab medicine and pathology lab who are doing a project with one of you and say, hey, if you're interested in having a translational add-on new piece to your research, we'll give you $16,000. You add a new co-translational science mentor, and you have this extra piece. It's really appealed a lot to some of the MSTP students who like the idea of having a translational add-on project. And so it's been very popular. A couple people, notably Alexa Pragman, MD, PhD, graduate of ours, started in this program while she was doing her PhD. She's gone on to get a KL2, a VA Career Development Award. She does microbiome and COPD research based out of the VA, has been very successful. Brian Suisse, who's actually a current TRDP scholar, he received the International Donald Lindsley Prize in Behavioral Neuroscience, one per year. Yes?
Who do you work through in our department when you're trying to place either the undergraduates or these students? Who do you work through in our department?
Well, it's a really good question. We don't have a departmental designee, so the answer would be to come direct to me or to the CTSI education group.
Okay.
And we're happy to help sort of direct students your way. And we do some mentor-student matching. One of the things we do with a lot of the summer students is we sort of particularly target those to junior faculty who maybe have had a little bit less mentoring experience, and it's a way to build up a mentoring profile for them. We do require the mentors to go through some of the mentor training that I'll talk about in a little bit. But it's a good point. We don't sort of have departmental designees. So currently we're funding 6 people through this mechanism. We planned to fund 2 or 3, but we got such great applicants, we said we got to put more money in this program. And it's 2 years of support. And they participate in weekly seminars and other things along with the TL1 program that I'll tell you about in just a second. So it's not just money and go do it, but there's actually career development programming, monitoring, annual reviews, etc. So right now, if you say, well, who's actually gotten these awards? It's been about 2/3 medical school. A lot of them have been dual degree students, but it's been postdocs, these are pre-docs, and a number are straight PhD candidates. So, for many of your trainees, this may be an appropriate add-on award if they have an interest in a translational science piece to whatever they're doing that's new. And they've been productive in terms of T32 awards, F awards, VA career development, R01s, etc. But they tend to be pretty junior still. This new TL1 program, which Jayne leads as the director with Angela Panos-Kaltzis-Mortari as associate director, is new in the last year. We got with this round of funding. It has 8 slots for pre-docs and 3 for postdocs. Over here are where do the 11 scholars come from. And you can see that it's all over the map. We've got medicinal chemistry, mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering, child development, social and administrative pharmacy, micro and molecular genetics, rehab science, sociology, nursing. So intentionally, this is very broad. And part of the goal is to create groups of scholars that really intermingle many different backgrounds so that they begin to develop some collaborations and working with each other. And that's part of this translational science spectrum. But I would say that the medical school is actually underrepresented here a little bit, if you think about that. So having just started in February, I think 4 scholars either have submitted or are submitting F awards. So we're really pushing that as sort of a metric of success of the program. But they have monthly seminar group meetings, they have biannual reviews of progress and all that stuff. So basically the seminars are set to cover what are called translational science core competencies, and there have been all these national committees to create these sets of competencies. That's very big on the educational side. And the people have both a primary and secondary mentor. They are now about to be assigned community mentors, and we sort of complete the oversight pieces for them. They must, of course, have an IDP that gets updated twice annually, all that stuff. And some of the skill sets that are focused on are grant and manuscript writing, presentation skills. They must do some coursework in biostats and team science. We're actually doing a joint team science course with Mayo. That's one of our joint activities. And so part of the activities there, like I said, use these National Postdoc Association competencies along with some CTSA specific competencies. And we are trying to sort of have this interprofessional education training as part of their component because we feel like that's part of the big team in having impact. So it's a little bit different from a standard My Pulmonary Biology T32. The breadth of training is much greater, and there's more focus on some generalizable translational science skill sets. Questions about this? It's really just starting. So, you know, it's a 2 years of funding support. So we're not sure when the next RFA is going to be because we sort of started everybody all at once. And we're hopeful that a number of the F awards will score so that we have new slots opening within the next 6 months. But I'm not sure. Betsy.
Is this information on the website of CTSI? I mean, is that a good entry point?
Yeah, so great question. So there is a website, www.ctsi.umn.edu. There's a training big button up there, and all this stuff, everything I'm going to say today, it may not be these exact slides, is available there. And it's actually, I think, pretty well organized, but if you go there and can't find something, email me. Yes?
Who are your community mentors? I see you have, what kind of people do you try to recruit for that?
Well, it depends on the person's type of research. We try to match the mentor or mentor's interests with the trainee or scholar. So some of the people are in industry. Some of the people might be from patient groups that are disease focused, you know, a cancer group or something like that. And some of them, you know, particularly for people who are doing more clinical trials work or community engaged research, are community organization members and things like that. So it's really a heterogeneous mix of community mentors. And this is something that we've had community members participate in an annual poster session that brings together all of our scholars. But, you know, we're trying to make that matching process work well because it's important. If the community mentor is really not interested at all in the research, it's not going to work.
This is a second question. Is that training module for mentors on your website?
Yes, and I have a slide on it. I will tell you about it. There were 2 opportunities specifically for that. And it's actually very good.
Yeah, actually, that might be useful for people even not in this.
Absolutely. I mean, part of the question, this is sort of one of the underlying themes, is how much are we doing for this particular set of scholars, the Nordstrom piece, and how much are we building tools that are broader that can be other groups can plug into and utilize, whether it's, you know, web-based or otherwise. And that's sort of one of our tensions is, can we serve the entire community, or how much do we sort of focus? And so another example is having template grants that have scored really well. So we have those on a website. It's not publicly available, but we have F grants and K grants that have gotten great scores that we can make available to people. I mean, it's not just there for anybody to go and snitch, and the users have to sign a confidentiality agreement and all that sort of stuff. But we want that to be available to the entire community. So that's the pre and postdoc piece. Now we're going to step up to starting junior faculty members. And there are two programs I want to tell you about here. They sort of are linked together, and one is pretty much brand new. There's been a pre-K program for people who are just starting on the faculty, but are relatively research intensive. And there is this new Early Career Excellence in Research Award. So the pre-K program, I'm the interim responsible faculty member for, has been around for a while. To be honest, it's a sort of teaser for the departments, I would say. Leo stepped out, I think, so that's good. Oh, sorry, here you are. So we give the awardees $50,000 towards of research funds over 2 years. These are institutional funds given to CTSI. These are not NIH dollars. But what the departments guarantee is 50% protected research time. So obviously, that 50% time for 2 years is worth a lot more than the $50,000. And that's why I'm jokingly talking about the teaser piece of this. And this group of scholars participates in the K seminars. I haven't mentioned to you of twice annual half-day translational science retreats. They get the oversight with biannual reviews. We will pay for external reviews of their K grants, provided they're done in time. The expectation is they'll submit a first round K award within the first 12 to 18 months. And so this program has been around since 2011. It serves 17 scholars. When we went back in for our CTSI renewal, we had a problem. It's a problem that applies across the medical school and a lot of the faculty, which is diversity. And basically in the KL2 program, we had very few scholars from underrepresented backgrounds. And so part of what has changed is that this used to be an open program for any junior faculty member. And since the last 3 years, we've made it exclusively for faculty from underrepresented backgrounds to try to help build the pipeline and increase the diversity of faculty who are research intensive here. And we know that to do that, we actually have to not just add people, but add, there's a culture piece, because you can recruit people, but you also have to retain them. They have to feel welcomed and part of the culture. So part of it is, it's a complex issue. I mean, Minnesota has that challenge just in general. So this is one of our efforts to do that. And we recognize that we're sort of working to fix one problem, but now we've created a hole in our training profile. So we're actually talking internally about whether we need more slots that are not exclusively URM directed while keeping a dedicated component, but that's sort of in the discussion phases, I guess I would say. So we've served 17 scholars, 12 were before this transition, and since 2016 it's been exclusive. And we've now linked this as part of the CTSI renewal, recognizing this problem. A new award was developed, which I'll tell you about in a second. So the people who've come through this in general have done pretty well. Almost all of them have submitted Ks. About half of them were funded, and one R01's been funded. Of the recent 5 underrepresented medicine faculty in this, we've had a K23 funded with everybody's got Ks or VA/CDAs submitted. So we're making progress, I think, in this area. What's really exciting is this new award opportunity. And it came out of the CTSA renewal process, and to try to address this issue of augmenting the diversity of our research faculty. And so part of what the prior dean committed were medical school funds. And most of the stuff I've been talking about is university-wide or AHC-wide, but now it's medical school dollars to fund 3 annually Early Career Excellence in Research Awards. So the goal of this is to increase the diversity of our research-intensive faculty here. It's also intended explicitly as a recruitment tool. The package that comes with this is very nice, as Stephanie could tell you. It is 75% of actual salary for 3 years, plus $500,000 of research startup funds. And that can be on top of whatever Leo or the department chair has committed as well. So this is a very nice incentive, both for the individual faculty as well as for the departments and department chairs, I would say. So the commitment was for 5 years of three faculty per year. So it's a substantial commitment when you add it all up. And part of it is we just don't want to give money and time, but an expectation is that the people who receive this automatically become part of the pre-K Discovery Scholar career development pathway, so that they get career development support also. And once again, that's part of the community piece, and being part of a community of scholars. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We're delighted. We're really excited, and we're particularly appreciative of Stephanie. So, so this was just launched January 2019. It's jointly administered by our group along with Amanda Termulin in the Faculty Affairs Office. Chairs bring potential candidates forward. It's on a rolling basis, so earlier is better than later. The people submit a CV, they submit a sort of a brief research statement, they submit potential mentors, interviews are done, so it's a pretty rigorous process, and then slots get committed. And so far, we've had 8 applicants, 4 offers have been made, 2 have been accepted, 1 person went elsewhere, and 1 is sort of in the process now. So we actually have 3 open slots for the 2019-2020 academic year. So opportunity awaits. And these are the 3 people participating right now in the Pre-K Discovery Scholar Program. We're really delighted. Glenn Simmons is a faculty member based in Duluth, who, thanks to the Pre-K Award, was able to free up more than 50% of his time for research. His primary research mentor is Peter Bitterman, so Glenn is down here very frequently, and we're excited to have him participate. And the 2 people so far who are the ECREA scholars include Stephanie, whom you should know well, and David Haynes, who has an interesting background. His PhD is in geographical science. So he's looking at sort of geographic impacts of disease distribution, looking, for example, at diversity in cancer screening based on regions, and how does where you're from affect bias in terms of cancer screening. So that's actually a really interesting skill set, and he's also linked to the informatics group. So we're now moving up the line. The next step, which is the KL2 program, which is really designed for research-intensive faculty who already have significant research experience with publications. They've got at least 1 mentor established. They have to be developing a multidisciplinary mentorship team. And they really are sort of clearly on a pathway towards an academic investigative career. And we want to help them get an individual K and then move to an R. That's the goal. So this program has been around. I am the PI of the grant. Kelvin Lim from psychiatry is the program director, and we work together on this. And I started, my CTSI involvement really started with directing this program. It's 3 years. 2 years of funding are provided by NIH. And then the 3rd year is provided institutionally. That used to be at a department or at a division level. And as a division director, I can say I'm really glad that it's being supported centrally. That was a major step forward. We've served 42 scholars. And once again, it's got a didactic career development component, and then also sort of the oversight and mentoring pieces. So it includes weekly, I'll talk a little bit more about the weekly seminars. Half of them are didactic on career development topics. Half of them relate to scholar writing, especially critical review of grants that are going to be submitted in specific aims, and really trying to take apart those, and also looking at grant review pink sheets and sort of saying, well, how are we going to revise this, and what's the next step? So we really push people in terms of the written plan. We have the half-day retreats. We will pay for, with all these programs, we will pay for the coursework and degrees, so that there's no out-of-cost out-of-pocket cost to the individual person. So yes, we ask them to get a Regents scholarship, but there's no 25% or whatever cost to them. So this is actually a great deal, and it's better than an individual K award because we will cover that cost. It doesn't have to come out of research funds or other personal or department funds. We again will do paid grant reviews. I'll talk a little bit about how the review process works across our programs. And we do this collaboratively. So in the past there was a Pediatrics K-12. We have the Building Interdisciplinary Research Careers in Women's Health program. Their scholars participate in our seminars, so we interact and our leadership works together. And there's a new learning health system, K-12, that's joint with Mayo that was garnered by Tim Beebe in the School of Public Health, and the learning health system scholars interact with them too. And you can see that this one has been mainly 2/3 medical school in terms of who's been funded. And we're trying to encourage diversity here because that's part of our mission. But a lot of the people have come medical school. Some of them are very much basic scientists. Mark Osborne, whose office is next door, now an associate professor who works with Bruce Blazer, does very basic high-level molecular biology targeted research, all the way to people doing community engaged stuff like trying to improve outcomes for mothers who become pregnant and their children born in prison. So it's the entire spectrum. There's a weekly seminar series. It's closed. We allow people with individual K awards to participate, but they must commit to attend 75% of the time. We try to really use that for career development pieces, and we do a lot of this jointly with these sort of affiliated programs. We try to have vertical integration with some near-peer and peer-to-peer mentoring built into this also. And I thought I would just share with you what we've sort of come up with as a best practice. So for each of the programs, we have a biannual review where once a year it's just looking at a written progress report and a revised IDP. But once a year we do a 90-minute sit-down where the mentor and the trainee come together with 3 senior faculty from our internal advisory board. And there's a big structure to this where about 20 minutes each is spent on research progress, just a brief overview, 20 minutes on career development, and then the mentor is kicked out, and we talk with the scholars about how the mentoring is going, and then we flip it, and then there's a group general discussion with specific recommendations, and the goal is to support career development. That's been really helpful, and I think it's pretty rare for trainees and their mentors to have 3 senior faculty members sort of taking stock of what's the progress, and this has actually been a highlight for a lot of our trainees, and people feel like this is one of the most helpful things that occurs. And it's obviously time-intensive faculty-wise, but if you really want to have people be successful, and we do the first review is done 6 months into any of our programs with the idea that we need course correction early. So overall, I would say that's been really helpful. And maybe 5 or 10% of the time major corrective action needs to occur, but it's a chance to do that. And it's really helpful, I think, for the mentors often to get some outside perspectives, and sometimes the mentors will say, I'm so glad you said that. They wouldn't listen to me, but when there are 3 additional faculty members saying, you got to get this published, you're never going to get a grant funded until you get this manuscript out the door, and our timeline for you is a month. You've got a month to show us you've submitted this. It really says a lot. Yes? So, great question. So what we try to do is, because we have only 3 years of funding for them, whereas an individual K can be 5 years, we actually expect everybody will submit an individual K within the first year. And you're going to see the recent results of this. We didn't used to do that. I mean, 5 years ago, the total number of K awards in the Academic Health Center was under 10. That's K01, K08, K23, the entire assemblage. I think as an institution, if you look today, it would be at least 25 or 30. So we've had a marked increase in that. And part of it is, yes, it turns over our slots. It actually creates problems for us when scholars are sort of supported by the KL2 briefly, but we've had a lot of recent success because that's one of our metrics is we want to give them a little more breathing space and time given how long it takes to get an R01. So ideally, we would love to have everybody have an R01 by the time they finish this, and that has happened occasionally, but we think a more realistic path is to an individual K that gives them a little more time to get that developed. And it requires being strategic about the training because you still have to justify. Somebody looks at you and say, well, you were on a T32 and then you had this K award, maybe you had a pre-K and you got training there. Why do you need more training? It's common. So the individual Ks have to be very well written to be clear about what training have you had and what's the individual K going to add. And so that part needs to be well crafted. Great question. And the other thing we do at the end of this is rather than saying, okay, you're done, back to the real world, you're out of the nest, we have a sort of end of the program meeting with the department chair and division director. So say, okay, what's the plan? We try to help be an ombudsperson for the scholars to make sure that the training that's been they've had in the time and energy invested in them is still going to be used as well as possible. And we've been able to negotiate, protected research time for almost all the people coming off this if they don't have grant support, because you don't want them falling off the edge of the earth. So if you say, is it successful or not? Some of the grants from this group are listed here, 9 R01s, another 8 R awards, 9 Ks, 7 others of federal funding. There are a couple of international equivalent Rs that are not here. But significant funding, I would say, and we've had 11 people promoted to associate professor of different flavors. And I actually think that's an underestimate, particularly since I just walked by Mark Osborne's door and saw he was promoted. So recently, we really emphasized, to come back to your point, Chris, that we really are pushing the early K submission. So if you say, well, how competitive is this program? The last 2 RFAs, we've gotten almost 60 letters of intent. We tried to spare people the work of writing full grants if they're not going to be funded. So about half of those people have submitted full applications. We've appointed 11 scholars from 3 different colleges. And of that group of 11, 7 have had K awards funded. So we've really focused on this, and I think it's sort of a good problem because it means that they're stepping into individual awards, but it means we lose our cohesive group of scholars for 3 years a little bit. And we ask them to keep participating in the career development portion of the program at least for a year after transitioning to an individual one. Yeah? I don't off the top of my head, Pat. We should do that. We've had a mixture, and it really has been both groups, I would say, that are successful, MDs and PhDs. And, it's interesting, in the KL2 cohort, I would say we've had fewer MD, PhD folks. I don't know why. But both groups have had significant success. Was there a specific underlying question?
Not for the public.
Okay. That's fine. Feel free to ask me later. We also, one thing that happens is these other institutes at NIH begin to partner up. So they have administrative supplements where there was one in biomedical engineering where they would fund a K scholar from biomedical engineering. We didn't apply for that one. We did get one funded for the Institute for NICCH, Complementary Health, who's a chiropractor, who's now part of our K Scholar group. So this is part of this translational spectrum desire that they have. But the NIH institutes are sort of talking to each other and trying to cross-fertilize a little bit. And then the last program I'm going to tell you about is the K to R Transition to Independence program. And the goal here is explicitly what you were getting at, which is let's get these people R01s, because ultimately, that's really the next major metric of success. And so this program is targeted for people who are near the end of an individual K. They don't have to be part of the KL2 program. So if a faculty member in any department has an individual K, they're eligible for this. And the goal is to be successful in getting an R01 funded. The person who directs this program is Assam El-Fakahani, former Associate Dean of Research in the College of Pharmacy. We've had 18 scholars in the program since 2011 who have generated 10 funded R01s plus 2 sort of equivalents. There are monthly meetings. A lot of it's focused on writing and brainstorming and designing grants and critical review, but there are some of the sessions are open, and we invite all of our past case scholars to come back for more career development pieces. But the writing and grant intensive and brainstorming ones are restricted. And so this has actually been a way to create an ongoing sort of group culture that is sort of a little bit broader than a departmental or disease-focused one, about sort of being strategic about getting grant funding and career development. So some of the stuff that we also do, I've mentioned these translational research retreats. They focus on different topics at different times. The last one we did was on communication skills. That's been a major focus. We feel like if we really want to train the next generation of leaders, the communication and professional skill sets are very important. So we've worked with a group called Narrative Pros about that. We also do other professional skills like conflict management, because we know none of us have any conflicts in our work. We've provided things like some of the advanced leadership assessments with debriefing. We've offered the option, not required, of professional coaching. We have this new program for senior faculty in leadership roles that we've exported or imported from the University of Colorado, called Leadership Innovation and Team Science, that we're offering for the first time this year. The former president of the University of Colorado, Judith Albino, is actually here with us and helping lead that program, which she leads at Colorado, and she's an amazing person. So we've tried to do not just standard stuff, but really have some areas of focus. And you asked about mentor training. So there really are two things that's worth knowing about if you're doing any mentoring at all. They're both accessible through the CTSI training portion of the website. One is free. It's open to anybody in the world. It was developed locally by Anne-Marie Weber-Main and Assam El-Fakahani. It's this online self-paced module. It takes 1 to 2 hours, I would say, optimizing the practice of mentoring. And when I went through it, I was positively surprised that there was a lot of meat on the bones. Even as somebody relatively experienced, there was a lot of interesting material there. There are hot links to actual references, etc. It gets refreshed annually, so it's not, the 10-year-old references. And this National Research Mentoring Network, known affectionately as NRMN, Anne-Marie Weber-Main is much a part of that, so that is helping to refresh this. So it's had more than 2,000 users from 500 plus institutions. So it's nationally recognized as an excellent basic platform in terms of mentoring. And that's free and open to anybody. And for all of the mentors for our programs, we say you must complete this. One of our external advisors said, "You mean you require it, but you don't force it?" I said, "Well, we actually track who's done it, and we bug the people who don't." There is a more advanced version that Anne-Marie and Assam have put together called the Mentor Excellence Training Academy, that's been offered 2 to 3 times per year. Now it's offered annually, but it's a hybrid online and in-person, more in-depth training that includes 3 2-hour facilitated workshops. And that's actually very high quality too. I've been through that. I would encourage people who are interested in training to do that. And I'm going to quickly speed through what's left just so we have some open time for discussion. Another piece of what CTSI is supposed to do is not just train this sort of select group of scholars, but also to provide the infrastructure workforce. So there is a component called the Translational Workforce Development Group that has really done a lot for research professionals. I'm just going to hit a couple high points. So the goal is to have a broad impact throughout the university, improving the efficiency, quality, and ethical basis of our research. Basically, they provide onboarding for new research coordinators. I'm not sure how much this involves faculty in the department, but they get an extensive 2-week onboarding process that has multiple components. that includes a Foundations of Research 2-week course. There actually is a great website, which I didn't know about until recently, called the Human Research Training website. And what it does is it will create for any new person a customized roadmap of what's the training you need based on the specific types of research that you do. And you can create multiple profiles for yourself. This is actually open. It doesn't. It requires a university ID, but you can get a guest ID, so somebody does not have to be an official university person. And I could create a profile of myself as a faculty member, as a something else, and you can sort of see what's involved. But it really advises what are the pieces of training that one should get, and I think it's really helpful. Our external reviewers who were here earlier this week said, boy, this is great. You need to export this and make this more publicly available as sort of concept for training, because the training pieces get more and more complicated depending on the type of research you do. What type of IRB approval do you need? All this other stuff. I'm not going to talk about that. This Foundations course has trained more than 200 people. And there are also just a whole bunch of online training modules that are accessible through that research training website. 4 of them, the 4 listed here, were developed internally and are refreshed locally. But there are, I think there are at least 60 additional training modules. So if you're interested in having somebody working with you get trained in a specific skill set, it's very likely that there will be an online training module. 2 of the ones that we're focusing on trying to make sure we have available that are au courant. One of them is sort of dissemination and implementation strategies, and the other is, of course, rigor and reproducibility. And that's important for faculty in our grants, but it's also important for the hands-on research people in the field. We offer a professional development series twice monthly for staff, and then informed consent training, which obviously has importance, especially at our institution. So just to conclude, so some of the things we've really tried to emphasize locally, in addition to sort of the standard stuff, are communication skills, and we work with this local group, Narrative Pros. We have community judges at our annual poster session. We actually do 3-minute thesis talk type training with people. The leadership training that's incorporated in each of the programs. The mentor training specifically is another major focus of ours. We are working hard on diversity initiatives, and one thing that's come up that actually really interested the Associate Director of NCATS was that we have a researcher moms group that meets. And they've been, very mutually supportive. And actually it's really helped they believe, their research productivity. So it's a way to sort of help the integration issues that occur. And we're now getting asked by people in different places, when are you going to start another one of those? So we also, the scholars themselves put together a writing group where they said, we want your help, and so we facilitate that, where people bring their computers and they lock themselves in a room for 3 hours, and they block their calendars, and just having that sort of mutual commitments to, I'm going to spend 3 hours a week writing, has really helped people be productive. It's not social time, it's really time to be sequestered and write. And then really trying to work on individualized career development. So I'm going to stop there and see what questions you have. Yes, sir.
I noticed you have a lot of your trainees working in the community in a number of different areas. What's the mechanism that you have to make the connections in the community to foster this and allow it?
So the question of sort of how do we actually do these? I'm a Yenta, a matchmaker. No, I'm kidding. We have one of the cores is the community engagement core. And so they have been really good about helping us find those people, because that's outside of my skill set. I mean, I may know in a particular area, gee, it would be good to have this person work with somebody with industry or somebody interested in this disease. But I don't know the people in the community centers and all that. So that's really beyond my knowledge space. So this is really a partnership with them. And actually, one of the things I didn't mention is we did get NCATS funding to develop a online module specifically to train the community mentors, because they don't understand what the process is like. So that's actually something that we have rolled out and is in pilot testing that we hope to then export to other sites. Yes?
What kind of faculty appointments qualify for the TL2 Scholar Program? Is it academic tenure research?
So the question is, what sort of faculty appointments? You need to be a real faculty member, not somebody who's really a research scientist who has a courtesy title where there's not a commitment. The goal is these are people we want the department and the institution to be committed to. We're going to commit to them. We want the departments to be committed. So we actually had some people sneak in who are really research scientists, PhDs who are sort of in this never, never land. And we turned around, went to the department and said, if we're going to invest in them, you have to invest in them too. But they do not have to be tenure track faculty. A number of them have not been tenure track. And if you look at the series in which many were promoted, I think 8 were associate professor in the academic track, 3 or 4 have been associate professor with tenure. So we don't say it must be tenure track. Because the spectrum of how much research people do in the academic track has been so broad, especially in the clinical departments.
But you're distinguishing these people who are embedded in other research environments that are not what you're calling real faculty, is asking the departments not to forward.
We would say that they're not eligible, and we require the department chairs to sign off. There's a contract with the department chairs where they are making promises to us. Now, we did have one department chair reduced from 75% to 50%. They somehow managed to try to change the paperwork, and we caught it. But we're pretty strict about that. That it really needs to be like an NIHK award. Unless you're a surgeon, it's 75% time. Yes?
Thank you for talking about those options. So what are the possibilities of CTSI offering for faculty who are 40 weeks a year on clinical service?
So that's a great question. So this is the what can we do for people who have major clinical commitments piece. And we've had a lot of internal debate about that. Because that's the bulk of the recently recruited faculty in clinical departments, to be honest. And the question is, do we have the bandwidth to really support people like that? Our external advisors have said, no, we shouldn't. That yes, the institution needs to support it. But CTSI, we have 4 staff. It's a relatively small budget. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to say, what can we really do and what's our mission? So I think this has been an internal debate where we want to help. We want to provide tools. So a lot of the online pieces and things, and we offer monthly career development seminars. We want to try to be helpful. We want to have the grant profiles up there. At one point, we thought Michigan had a program that was a 12-week, half-day-a-week program to do research training in a little project for people who were busy clinicians. And it turned out that most of the people who took it were not physicians. They were more respiratory therapists or physical therapists. And they've actually disbanded that program. We had bought the rights to use it, but we weren't sure that that it was really accomplishing its goals, so we didn't actually implement it. So that's a hole in terms of the training, research training and support institutionally, I would say. And we've debated, is that us or not us? And at the moment, I think we're saying we want to try to help, but that's not a primary focus, because if we try to do that, then we become Walmart. So it's a really good question. I want to be honest in my answer, but it has been an internal debate. Yes?
So these are great programs. In the future, do you think the CTSI are going to expand it to the senior resident or maybe fellows, because that's the one you needed to promote and you didn't so that people to pass on for
So it's a great question. We have this new CRSC, which is the sort of hub for clinical research, and a lot of what I'm hearing is a lot of residents, fellows are sort of showing up, well, I got a project I want to do. And, once again, it's a question of sort of where's the best training for them. We can help organize sort of the online pieces to help get those things set up. We can't replace the mentors who really need to be guiding the people, I think. So what I would say is, get into a T32. if you're interested, get an add-on translational project like the TRDP and utilize some of these really developed pathways. Because I think that for, a resident who's got 6 months of time for research, we don't really, being honest, once again, we don't have a program that's really designed for that specifically. That is an institutional need more globally. But can we be everything for everybody? At the moment, we can't, at least. Yes?
There's some programs like in Boston and elsewhere where they offer 2-year fellowship. So the first year is strictly clinical fellowship, and the second year is an option of the research fellowship, just to train residents who are transitioning from the training into So maybe something to think about.
Yeah, I think if somebody's devoting a year, then it's worth our thinking about it. But a little bit of time scattered. We've talked, for example, in surgery, a lot of times there's a 2-year research requirement. How can we interact with them? I think the other question for us as a group is how do we support the many T32s that are scattered through the academic health center? And where can we combine resources and sort of not reduplicate efforts and facilitate those pieces? Because it's silly to have everybody reinventing the wheel. So I think we can't provide the training for everybody. We can help be a focal point and organize that. I don't want to overpromise. I hope this has been useful and sort of giving some structure and knowing sort of what are some opportunities. I try to emphasize where potentially for trainees or new recruits, et cetera, there's opportunity for interaction and taking advantage of stuff. And the 2 websites I mentioned, both the training portion of the CTSI website that will take you to the mentoring and the human research training for research professionals are both really good.
One more question?
Sure.
So the Cancer Center has a big community outreach need right now, and NCI is really coming down on cancer centers to reach out. Do you partner with that kind of effort at some level?
Absolutely. A lot of our leadership, not surprising, with Bruce Blazer and Dan Weisdorf involved, directly integrate with a lot of the cancer center activities. And so a lot of the informatics and other pieces, there's a lot of sharing back and forth. Because once again, it's silly to do things in silos.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you.
It's been terrific.
Yeah, thank you very much.